Hello everyone! Welcome to the Foundations of Occupational Science course for US-based OTP's waiting list. I'm excited to introduce you a bit to this project, which is my capstone affiliated with the University of Utah. So who am I? Many of you may know me, but for those who don't, my name is Josie Jarvis, and I am a US-based occupational therapy clinician. I've really have worked across the lifespan, throughout the state of Washington in many traditional practice settings since 2016. I've worked in acute care, post-acute care, memory care, school-based practice, outpatient pediatrics, and I'm going into emerging practice development as I complete my degree. Prior to becoming an occupational therapist, I graduated from the Evergreen State College with a Bachelor's of Science in Evolutionary Biology and a Bachelor's of Arts in the Social Sciences with a focus on governmental advocacy. I got my master's degree from Eastern Washington University in 2015, and I've been pretty active with formal OT advocacy efforts since 2014 with partnership with the Washington Occupational Therapy Association and AOTA's Emerging Leader Development Program. I have been passionate about disability rights advocacy since really early life developments, and I really stumbled back to school back in 2018, 2019, looking at programs, looking for an antidote to progressive burnout and cynicism. And I really found what I was looking for by getting a deeper exposure to the field of occupational science. And this is something that I'm eager to bring more literacy around to field clinicians in the United States. So the goal of this project is to enhance field clinician literacy and orientation to foundational and emerging occupational science as it relates to our contemporary practice in the US. I want everybody to gain introductory literacy and orientation to the foundational concepts, as well as getting some practice being open to engaging with new perspectives and possibilities related to occupation and occupation-based practice in the United States. And I really want you to know that you play a significant role as a field clinician in the ongoing evolution of occupational therapy and occupational science in the US as part of an interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary scientific process. And I want students to feel that they have access to the support they need to start making goals and plans to engaging with occupational science to enhance their daily life and practice as an OTP in the So we're going to do this in the capstone process by launching the first modules through the end of the year, including the orientation and onboarding that will be live on the 20th of October, next Thursday, as I present my poster on this. I'm also going to teach you how to access materials and publications that are referenced as an occupational therapy practitioner without a university login. And we're going to go over occupation and contemporary history and what science is and what it means to be a scientist. Those will all be launched before the end of the year, and there will be several more modules that progressively go from more abstract context to more applied concepts through going into 2023. So why is this important now? 2020 brought with it many important changes to our culture in the United States and internationally, but in the world of occupational science and occupational therapy, there's been several key developments, including the Society for the Study of Occupation, SSO USA, had their first virtual conference in 2020. We've got the publication of the Occupational Therapy Practice Framework, Domain and Process 4th edition, that formally integrated several key occupational science concepts into our guiding process. So something that's important for every OTP practicing in the US to know about are guidelines for practice-based settings, as well as AOTA's statement on justice and systemic racism formally incorporates many occupational science concepts. Our update for our Vision 2025 incorporates many core occupational science concepts, as well as our Code of Ethics revision. SSO USA also submitted in 2020 a formal position statement on the relationship between occupational therapy and occupational science, and they're currently in the process of undergoing our first US-based occupational science journal that has a focus for applied translational science of occupational science concepts into US practice settings. So there's many unique opportunities that haven't been available before that are now available to US OTPs and engaging with these concepts. We've also just had many problems in accessing this concept on the clinician level. Many clinicians that are currently practicing in the United States have entered the OT field having graduated in the late 80s and 90s, and thus were not really able to access occupational science because it functionally hadn't really existed in a public forum yet. There are many educational disparities that are currently still impacting clinicians in the field that are even getting their OT education today, because ACOT hasn't required foundations of occupational science as part of the general OT education. There's just a lot of disparities in what field OTPs are exposed to. And there's currently no entry-level educational content on occupational science that's designed specifically for field clinicians that I can find. It's mostly in textbooks, journal articles, and in-person academic conferences. And there's been in the US a trend towards partitioning occupational science for occupational therapy since its founding. And there's this sense that it's really only something that exists for advanced scholars and academics and not necessarily for field clinicians. There's also been limited publishing venues for OS contents in the US, which just makes it that much harder to access international publications. And there's been limited interest in theory and foundational science content within AOTA's conferences and within the American Journal for Occupational Therapy. So we're also working towards ACOT standards incorporating OS more. So there's also been several key shifts in US-based OT practice that have developed since the pandemic, including revival of social and racial justice crises that are now having more visibility and more awareness with calls to action across almost every scale of US-based society. We have ongoing exacerbation of a public mental health crisis, which has resulted in calls for increased investment in public health on a variety of different scales on the state and federal level. We've had the COVID-19 pandemic, which has also called for increased investment on more of a public health-based model. And we've seen an increase in domestic refugee and houselessness crisis here in the United States, as well as transition to value-based care models and Medicare and more of a collaborative approach in school-based practice. There's been a divestment from OT in home health cases, as well as increased policy wins in our ability to open up home health cases. We've seen an expansion in telehealth and virtual school-based practice and pediatric OT that is also calling for more of a co-occupational format of service delivery. We're seeing also a transition to more demand for virtual OT education and potential threats of scope of practice encroachment, as well as a persistent need for clarity on the occupational identity and role of occupational therapists, which can only be enhanced by increased exposure to our science base and our distinct science base. Really, we all need the insights of occupational science more than ever. If you don't know, occupational science has a huge development of literature internationally about our role in public health interventions and looking at social justice and policy issues, as well as how to distinguish our services from other providers through a distinct mode of inquiry and development of our science base. So this course seeks to be an accessible online asynchronous education platform on the foundations of occupational science for US-based OTPs. We really need accessible and meaningful online learning for busy professionals. We really don't have the time and budgets as OTPs for textbooks, journal articles, or international conferences. We need to connect with other clinicians that understand the practice realities we're facing, and we need practical hope, examples, and guidance in how to tangibly improve our practice for our well-being and the well-being of our clients. We need equitable and empowered seat at the table in developing our evidence base. We need no more top-down power dynamics that trigger our educational trauma, and we need to seek to practically better our lives while practically transforming our practice in a meaningful way by exposure to our distinct science base. So really, my goal is that by the end of this course, you will know your position in relation to the legacy of OT and OS history and the demand for OT in navigating the current crises we're facing in the US and internationally. You'll have a greater confidence in OT's science base and perspective. You'll feel empowered and supportive in implementing occupation-based evaluations and interventions in traditional practice settings across the lifespan with support of our literature, policy, and peer guidelines. You'll feel inspired by the potential to develop innovative OT programming in the US. You'll know how to confidently differentiate your services from other providers. You'll know how to incorporate OS concepts into your daily documentation and interventions efficiently. You'll have space to creatively imagine new possibilities for your career and the future of OT in the US. You'll know how to access published literature without a university login, and you'll build relationships with other OTs who value lifelong learning. You'll find out that OT theory is a lot more empowering than boring once you have years of practice in the field to contextualize with it. I'm so pleased to have you join us. Please sign up below by taking the pre-assessment to guarantee your spot in the initial launch of the course. Right now, I currently have spots open for about 40 OTPs to go through the initial capstone launch of the course through the end of the year. You'll receive an email on the 20th of October, next Thursday, with how to access the orientation onboarding of the course. I'm so excited to share this experience with you. Thank you.